Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to Boxing Unwrapped. Welcome to this week's Boxing Unwrapped, giving you all the info on boxers you don't care about. I'm Ryan.
I'm Andrew. Good one, Ryan.
Good one. And just a reminder, guys, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And leave us a review on whatever device platform you use to listen to this, because actually it's super duper duper important for us, and we are going to keep banging on until more and more people do it.
Yeah, we'll stop once everyone's done it, and we mean like everyone in the podcasting world. Like once we have 100% saturated subscribers, then we'll stop.
Pretty much, or even if 10 people do it, maybe. But anyway, Andy, do you want to tell the good people what we have in store for them this week?
Yes. So you said it was the show about boxers you don't care about. This week, on the eve of the big fight / is it a big fight ? Who the F are Chris Eubank Jr. and James Degale is the main focus of the show. So we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about these two exemplars on the back of their upcoming fight this weekend. We'll also run over what the F are the results from last weekend. Just a couple of things to go over there. What the F are the other fights coming up this weekend. There are a couple other things to point out. What the F went wrong last week, which is surprisingly thin a section.
God, we're getting too good.
And a probably fairly chunky random news, a hard-hitting and controversial grinds my gears as always.
Indeed.
And a little bit of listener corner to round things out.
Good stuff. Well, why don't we jump into this week's main topic, which is a question that probably most people are asking themselves: who the F are Chris Eubank Jr. and James Degale?
Do you think they're asking why are we asking, and then maybe why are we asking that they're asking that we're asking,
and it just goes in some sort of weird loop forever
until everyone's head just hurts and they go, no, do I care? Maybe I do care. Probably a few people will care. It depends what exciting nuggets we've managed to uncover.
Well, I mean, look, the reason we're talking about this is because they are fighting this weekend on ITV Box Office. And, it has been a kind of will they, won't they for a while. Both of these guys are really clinging on to their boxing careers. And
they're clinging on to relevance by their fingernails on a cliff face.
They have tried to hype this fight up a little bit, and I think it might do okay numbers. But having said that, for an all British fight, really, there's nothing on the cards. They've just really started to push it as, whoever loses retires, really.
Yeah, well, Degale's saying that about that it's a retirement fight. Eubank's saying, no way. He's like, well, I'm not going to lose, but also I wouldn't retire because, he's relatively young and fresh in comparison. But this is the British Pacquiao Broner, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a dog shit fight.
But I am quite intrigued. I'm kind of busy, so I don't think I have the option to buy it. But I am kind of intrigued as to how it goes. If I was idle, I would definitely think about watching.
I'm gonna watch it.
I would resent myself for paying.
Yeah, I'll watch it on behalf of this program.
Right. Okay.
I am a trooper, man. Sitting in.
How much is it? Is it £20?
Yeah, it's £20. So £20. To be honest, for a man of my means, Andy, nothing. Nothing. Nada. It's a couple of.
I think it will do good numbers. Yeah, I think you're right. By the way.
Yeah, I think it will do good numbers. So, I mean, the way we've kind of split this up, guys, is I've looked at Chris Eubank Jr. and Andy has looked at Mr. James Degale. So, I'll probably just run through Chris Eubank Jr. because I think most people probably recognize that he is Chris Eubank Sr.'s son, who, was a successful boxer.
He was.
And known for being rather eccentric as well. He's been on, I think, Celebrity Big Brother. He has been around wearing a monocle.
He's got quite an outlandish dress sense, doesn't he, Dad?
He does, and also he's quite loquacious, I think, as well. He's an interesting kind of person, semi-philosophical, but also a moron. So
it's a tightrope trying to walk that. You kind of trying to sound intelligent, and when you might not have the beans, it's difficult to kind of to convince.
Yeah. Now there's been a few interviews recently with Chris Eubank Jr. Kind of going over his background and stuff, and from his own mouth, he recognizes that he has quite an atypical upbringing for a boxer. He grew up in a multi-million-pound mansion. He never wanted for anything. Good schools, stuff like that. Initially, actually, his father completely dissuaded him from boxing because he didn't think he would be tough enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He actually never saw any of his dad's fights until he was about 11 years old. And what ended up happening was he was at a friend's house about the age of 11 for a sleepover and found a VHS. They were saying, this is going back, to the good old days of tape. And it was actually one of his dad's fights, and he watched it, and it was his introduction to the sport. And he did say that he wanted to box. His dad said no. And he actually took it up at age 14. His dad tried to stop him, but Lennox Lewis helped convince Chris Eubank Sr. about it, because he said, look, he's, at least let him try it. If he's rubbish, then, it just doesn't go any further. And so it's Lennox Lewis's fault that Chris Eubank Jr. is a boxer, really. Yeah.
So he's the one we should blame.
He's the one we should blame.
Bones to pick the Lewis.
Now, he also, Chris Eubank Jr., fucking started acting like a bit of a street kid when he was a teenager. And he started to get in trouble outside the ring. He says he was involved with a gang, and he would be their kind of street fighter because they knew he was quite good at fighting, right? There's actually, you can search it, there's some footage on YouTube of him fighting in a car park.
Honestly?
Yeah, it's there, plain to see. And
is it good?
I mean, it's a bit of a street fight. Actually, someone else jumps in, and then it turns into a bit of a brawl, and Chris Eubank Jr. wins. But this video footage actually fell out to the media, and this was the first time that his parents realized he was involved in this kind of stuff. They had no idea.
Keeping a close eye on him. His monocle must be cracked.
Well, he said as well, right? This is quite funny. He said, he was involved with all these kind of street kids and gang members, and they'd all go home, and he'd be going home to his £1 million mansion. Do you know what I mean? They'd be going.
Yeah.
So he said he was kind of almost living a double life, but because of this, he was actually kind of sent by his parents away to the States to get away from it all.
I know. I heard this. Yeah.
And to focus on boxing. So he lived in Las Vegas. And trained at Mayweather's gym, and was trained by Floyd Mayweather Sr. And this is where he kind of learned to box and spar and stuff. Which
I love it. You send him to an ex-criminal.
I know, right?
To straighten him out.
Exactly. He actually won Golden Gloves, which is quite prestigious. And he ended up having 26 amateur fights, which isn't a huge amount. But he says because of the caliber of people he was sparring with on a daily basis, he feels that was his amateur kind of pedigree built from that.
Okay.
he also is this was quite interesting. He actually recognizes and feels that his name is a burden. So being Chris Eubank's son is actually a burden for him career-wise. So it's opened up doors promotionally very easily. But when it comes down to it, like, he feels a burden to win because he, is obviously the son of a very successful boxer. Now, he turned professional in 2011 and initially signed with Mick Hennessy, and was kind of semi-trained by Ronnie Davis. And he, we've always criticized him because he fights at super middleweight. But where did he begin his fucking career? He started at middleweight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I know that.
He went up
a while ago. Yeah,
and he was relatively successful at middleweight. In the beginning of his career, he was knocking boys out left, right, and center. Then I think there was a bit of a hitch, right? Because I don't know whether or not it happened too early for him or whatever, but he gets into the ring with Billy Joe Saunders, which was for the British middleweight title, the Commonwealth title, and the European middleweight title, and loses it.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. Billy Joe Saunders said when they fought that he was really out of shape. Saunders was not in the best of shape when they fought. But Eubank kind of, like, all of the early rounds, he just kind of, like, froze up. It was the first kind of test fight he'd had, like, meaningful fight.
Yeah.
And he just kind of froze up.
Yeah.
And Saunders just got up, like, a big points lead. And then, because I think Saunders' conditioning was quite poor, it allowed Eubank to come back and take a lot of the later rounds, but he didn't quite manage to do enough. I think it was really close, was it not? The decision was really close in the end.
Yeah, and I think Eubank feels like he was robbed, actually.
I think he deserved to lose the fight. I mean, I don't think that's true.
No.
I mean, he thinks
feels
that, but I mean, the reality was, I think he'd lost the fight.
Yeah, So, and I, to be honest, it's down to his inactivity probably in the earlier rounds, because he didn't lose by a landslide, because it was 2-1, and he only lost by a couple of rounds, so it was quite close. Now the one thing that is interesting as well is that he left Hennessy Sports and signed with Matchroom, right? And he actually fought on the undercard of AJ and Dominic Breazeale, which he ended up winning his fight. But then there was talk about him fighting Triple G.
Yeah, I remember this.
And he called him out.
Quite a lot of chat about it, yeah.
There was loads of chat about it, and seemingly the papers were kind of drawn up. But Eddie Hearn then offers the fight to Kell Brook. And this is where Eubank then splits with Matchroom.
There's always been a lot of chat about the Eubanks they were like superly difficult to deal with promotionally. There was always a lot of chat that making fights with them was like incredibly hard work. I think, and there was a lot of rumor stuff said that was related to his father.
Yeah,
and he was just impossible to deal with, or very difficult to deal with.
Exactly. I mean, Eubank Senior wanted a bigger share, and and to be honest, I think it's probably good for Junior that he didn't fight Triple G, because it could have been his eye socket that was smashed in.
Yeah, you wouldn't have given him much of a hope, really, of beating him.
No way.
Based on what we've seen since, yeah.
But then, he then made his move up to super middle, where, he has been fighting since. Most notably, probably in the mind of most listeners, was when he fought in the World Boxing Super Series against Groves. Yeah. And that was a really hyped fight. I mean, I remember the hype behind it.
It was big.
Yeah, it was real big. And there was a lot of chat about whether or not Eubank was going to do it. Actually,
he was the marginal favorite with the bookies.
Yeah.
For that fight, as I think he is for this one.
Yeah, exactly. However, if anybody can cast their mind back to October 2017. Eubank froze in that fight. None of his speed came out. He really, and he got absolutely pelted by ultimately a one-armed Groves.
By the end.
By the end, yeah.
He didn't look like he had a way to close the distance. He was just trying to walk in, and he was on the end of Groves' jab the whole night, was he?
Yeah.
He just kept jab, and then there was the cut as well, so he was bleeding from the head clash, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So then there was like the big issue about all the blood, and he couldn't see, so then he was like loading up, and he was swinging a miss. Yeah, it was a bit of a mess.
So the only fight he's had since was on the undercard of Groves Callum Smith, where he fought JJ McDonough, which was like he's like an Irish journeyman fighter. And if you guys remember, the guy pulled out after round 3 complaining of a shoulder injury. It kind of all kicked off. So he hasn't really been tested by any higher level of opposition since then, which is actually quite a big layout, really. If we're talking about that, was September last year. So, this will really be a test for him. He has recognized that, not having a trainer was a mistake. So it will be interesting to see what happens now if he is maybe starting to be more polished in the ring. But you would think for a fight of this magnitude, it takes a while to build a level of trust with a trainer. So who knows? Mm-hmm.
It depends also, I guess, his willingness to listen, doesn't it? Which obviously relates to the trust, but it's like, is Eubank taking on whatever the trainer? Because you think if the trainer's kind of a reasonable level, he's going to have some fairly substantial suggestions, and he'll be offering him like advice or guidance during the fight as well. And it's like, is Eubank in the heat of the battle going to be listening to him? I guess is one of the big unknowns. But I guess we can see during the fight how it progresses, whether or not he's listening, what the trainer's saying, and also how it's being received, and whether he's making adjustments in the fight.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why he's competing at super middle.
No.
He doesn't. I don't think it would be at all difficult for him to make middleweight, and by all accounts, he's a tremendous athlete.
Yeah.
And he stays in shape like 365. He's not like he balloons. I don't think he balloons at all. I think he stays at fight. It seems to be he stays at fight weight the whole time almost. So I don't really know why he competes at super middle when you're giving away the size.
Yeah, it's a real strange one because he was highly rated, at middleweight. So it's a strange one. Little known fact as well. He appeared in a very brief reality TV series on Channel 5 called At Home with the Eubanks.
No, I don't remember that. I didn't know.
It did not last long. I think it was about 6 episodes, to be honest, back in 2009. So, there we go.
Good. Is that you?
That's Chris Eubank. That's Chris Eubank Jr.
Chris Eubank in a nutshell.
And
I'll do Degale, and then we can do fight predictions afterwards.
Let's do it.
James Chunky Degale.
Chunky Monkey.
Do you know why he's called Chunky?
No.
I looked it up. So I think he was a bit chubby when he first started boxing, and he took up boxing at the age of 10, which is, as we've talked about before, is the sort of age you want to be if you want to be super duper good at boxing. Technically, you want to start at a very young age before you had a chance to mess up your technique.
Yeah.
So he was a bit bulky, shall we say, when he first went into boxing at 10, and he was nicknamed Chunky in the boxing gym, and it's always stuck with him. So he's Chunky or Chunk is how people refer to him. He is born to a Grenadian father and an English mother.
Okay.
So mixed nationality, heritage, if you like. But obviously grew up in the UK. He, unlike Junior, had a rather stellar amateur career. So his amateur record finished at 79 and 16. Now, he famously won Olympic gold in 2008 at middleweight. Mm-hmm. Before that, he medalled at both the Commonwealth Games and the European Championships. So pretty extensive and very stellar amateur pedigree. Mm-hmm. And it's always like one of the things that's been talked about in the build-up is about how much of a more proficient technical boxer James Degale is versus Eubank in terms of the amateur pedigree, in terms of the technical ability in the ring. He's also, I think, he was the first British Olympic champion to then become a world title holder. And obviously there's been several follow in his footsteps, a la Joshua, etc. But he was the first of that kind of British crop to be able to do that. He's 33 years old, so he's not actually vastly different age-wise. What's Eubank? Is he 30, 31?
He's 29.
29, okay, so he's a little bit older. He's 33. But he's done some hard yards, as our friend Degale. He's done some hard fights. So he got an MBE, I should say, as well. It's quite good. Nice old MBE in the New Year's Honours List of 2009. And he turned professional at the end of 2008. So he won Olympic gold in the summer of 2008, and then he turned professional at the end, and quite quickly kind of started like racking through the victories as the ones often with a strong amateur pedigree do. They kind of run through fairly quickly. So within 2 years of being a professional, he was the British super middleweight champion. Then I guess the point at which professionally things started to gain more attention, I think the response before that had been sort of fairly muted, even though he was an Olympian, and I think a couple of his early performances were less than overwhelming. And it was March 2011, so that's what I guess just a bit over sort of 2.5 years of being a pro. He fought George Groves, quite like a highly anticipated grudge match that he obviously didn't get on very well, and it was quite, it sometimes kind of occasionally happens and always attracts a lot of interest when you have the still upwardly kind of mobile fighters, especially in a domestic rivalry sense, who fight each other with unbeaten records, and they have that, that always attracts a lot of interest. I'm trying to think of a recent kind of comparable, maybe something like when our boy Josh Taylor fought Howard Davies. Yeah, I guess what was that? Something along those kind of lines. Yeah. Maybe would be the equivalent. Anyway, he lost to Groves by the narrowest of narrowest margins. So the judges scored the fight 115-115, 115-114, 115-114 to Groves. So it was incredibly wafer thin, and apparently I remember watching it. I didn't rewatch it for this, but I have watched it a while ago. It was literally you could have scored it to either. It was just basically it was impossible to split them, or it was very difficult to split them. Then after that, he had quite a lot of, kind of not maybe as high a level quite as Groves was at that point, but like kind of building up to his sort of like world title level fights. And even in those fights, there were some question marks over his stamina.
Interesting.
So there were points at which he seemed to fade relatively badly in the second half of some of these fights. What had normally happened was he'd established enough of a lead for it not to be an issue, but there were still several points where he would sort of get clawed back, so the scores would look more competitive in terms of losing the second half of fights. Now, that actual pattern was also true when he eventually won his world title, or I say eventually, that's a bit harsh, in May of 2015. So it's not that long ago, really, that he became a world champion. So he beat Andre Durrell in May of 2015 to win the IBF super middleweight, and he won 114, 112, 114, 112, 117, 109. But again, he slowed down in the second half of that fight, but he had done enough to win it, and it was clear that he deserved to win the fight against him, so he was justified for doing that. In that fight, I looked it up, and he threw just over 400 punches, and for super middleweights, throwing 400 punches in a fight is not very much. I know it varies a lot from fight to fight, but it's not much of an output. It's not a huge output when you think back to like Usyk's 1,000 punches cruiserweight. And there's lots of examples where, people in that weight division or higher are throwing a lot more. So if you're throwing less punches, you better make them count. Now, after that, he won reasonably clearly against Lucien Boutte, I think you say, not Butte or Boutte, I think it is. But Lucien Boutte, who a few years earlier had been battered, dropped, and stopped by Carl Froch. Degale, by the way, at various points in his career called out Froch.
Really?
Not quite sure of the timings, but he called him out at various points saying he wanted to fight him, but obviously we know Froch went to the Groves fight instead. After the Boutte fight, he had a fairly laborious win over Regilo Medina, who's a fighter I don't know a huge amount about. And then came the unification fight against Badu Jack. Now, I've heard various... Who's that guy? Who's that guy? Spencer Farrell is his name. The guy with all of the chat.
Yeah.
He says that Badu Jack steals boxers' souls when they fight. So I don't know what that makes that boy, Marcus Brown. He stole Badu Jack's soul. Out his forehead. He ripped open a vortex into his brain. So what is part of a wider point is that Degale has been in a lot of pretty tough contests, including obviously it was a 12-round war against Badu Jack, in which he did throw 600 punches. So he did throw more punches in that fight than he did against previous. In terms of, just as a point on that one, his last fight was like a complete like mismatch, but like a tick-over fight until he got a big one against the guy called Fidel Munoz, who he knocked out, I think, in 3. But apart from that, in his last, if you discount that one, his last 6 fights, he's not knocked out any of his opponents. Obviously, he's had a loss in there, but there's been no knockout stoppages, so he's going the distance like all of the time. And I don't think it's necessarily because he's fighting like it's not always that they've been like incredibly high level guys, which I can talk about in a second. But it's that he somehow doesn't seem to be carrying the knockout power. His record is 25 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, and 15 of the 25 wins have come by way of stoppage. But like I said, if you discount that last one, which he stopped, the boy Munoz, then the last 6 apart from that have all gone the distance, whether win or loss. So he's taken quite a lot of punishment, and he's been in a lot of like pretty tough fights. He then had a long layoff after the Badu Jack fight for a shoulder injury, and he had the pair of what can only be described as dog shit fights versus Caleb Truax. I say dog shit. The fights were quite interesting. They were quite entertaining, but you're kind of like, this is not a guy that Degale should be having losing to fairly clearly in one fight, and then scraping by on the skin of his teeth in the rematch. And this is a lot of what's stemmed the chat about how far into decline is Degale.
Yeah.
To put it into context, in 2015, Danny Jacobs, who is obviously a very high level middleweight, he fought Truax and like schooled him and then knocked him out. I think it was either the 11th or the 12th round. And Anthony Durrell knocked out Truax in a round in 2016. So, you know, Truax is not a high level fighter.
No.
And Degale, I think we give him the first fight as like his first fight back from the shoulder, which he narrowly lost, to say, well, maybe you're super rusty, maybe, you know, you came back too soon after the injury, etc. But I think it's difficult for all those reasons to justify his performance in the second one.
Yeah.
Which he won, but again, it was not at all clear cut that he did win it, and it was by the skin of his teeth he was awarded it. In the second fight with Truax, he threw 327 punches, which is, even accounting for compy box, error, etc., that is really not very many punches to be thrown. That's pretty punch light.
He's not busy, like.
He's not busy. And we'll come on to it a bit, but there's potentially implications for that in terms of his fight with Eubank. So we've got lots and lots of very tough fights going the distance. We've got seemingly quite a decline in terms of punch output and performance. We've also got quite a lot of question marks or rumours circulating regarding what is sort of like lifestyle choices between fights in terms of does he play quite hard, etc. So there's a lot of stuff building to say I think people are really not very confident about what sort of shape he's going to be in, or how much is going to be left.
Yeah.
He's had his soul taken, and he's had his teeth knocked out, and all this stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. Well, interesting to see what's left. I looked at some stuff about his approach. It's hard to speak about what some of the things that Degale has said without sounding kind of like, I don't know what the word would be, like superior.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, you know, if some of the things he says are quite funny, but then you think, I'm going to sound like a prick if I make fun of him for this. So there was fuck it, we'll do it. So there was an interview where he was asked, what's the last book he read? And the answer to the question was, I'm not really a reader, but every Thursday and Friday I read my boxing news. I read the papers every day, but I'm not really a book reader.
Fuck's sake, man.
He's not a book reader.
He's not a book reader.
Not one for reading the books. What was also interesting, as I kind of sort of cast our minds back to last week, the whole kind of marginal gains and the implementation of data and science in boxing. This was him speaking in 2017. He said, "It's mad. I have never looked at the sports science side of boxing. The game has evolved now. Fighters have all these guys. Up until now, I have just done the boxing work. I have always made weight on my own, but if you want to be the very best, to be elite, you need all these pieces. Massage. I've never had a masseuse work on me. And he goes, so, but it's interesting though, because obviously at 2017 he was, he was a world champion, he was a high level guy. He was an Olympian as well. So it's also indicative of, how at the point where he was an amateur, what the amateur scene was like in terms of sports science, in terms of professionalism. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I think there's quite a lot of chat about that. So anyway, but he seems like, I don't know, he's quite forthright in his comments, but not much of a thinker. Maybe should we say that?
I don't think he is a thinker. Whereas I think Chris Eubank Jr. presents himself as a thinker, but he's not really a thinker either, to be honest.
No, I think genuine thinkers that are probably within boxing are probably relatively thin on the ground. Yeah. They're not non-existent, but they're thin on the ground. We'll give the Klitschko's some credit.
I mean, they got PhDs, those boys.
They got PhDs. We don't have PhDs.
No, we don't. We got PhDs from the School of Life.
Earned the hard way.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is going to be interesting in a styles versus fights way, because, James Degale has got a lot more experience in tough fights, right? So he's going to have that capability to kind of turn on and understand maybe what he needs to do when he's in those championship rounds and he's going to have to fight through. Whereas at a higher level, when it's really mattered, Chris Eubank Jr. has never managed to pull it through. Really?
No.
When he won that IBO, but he backs it. But when he won his IBO, there was like quite a lot of chat about that guy that he faced, that Reynold Quinlan. Mm-hmm. And like he was nothing but a punching bag, really.
He was terrible. Yeah.
He didn't really fight back. So, can we say Chris Eubank has really had a performance against a high level fighter where you've gone, oh shit? Because sometimes you can lose against high level fighters and still look good.
Mm-hmm. You can look worthy.
You can look worthy, but he's the big occasions he's never really pulled it out, because even in his qualifying against, in the World Boxing Super Series, he was fighting, Anvi Yildirim.
Yildirim, who's now getting his world title shot shortly, but
but
it's. I think a lot of people, including myself, were sucked in with that because his knockout, like he looked so explosive in that fight. Mm-hmm. He looked amazing. Yeah. And the knockout was like a proper highlight reel job. But it's kind of like, I guess we'll see how badly Yildirim does in his title shot, but. He looked amazing, and then that obviously built up the hype, and then the Groves fight, he looked kind of terrible. He looked really kind of out of ideas and struggled technically, and his footwork looked poor. So it kind of it'll be interesting to see if he's made adjustments to make himself look more, or to be more technically proficient.
Yeah, indeed.
And also see his power, see what he's like. It'll be interesting to see if he can hurt Degale.
Yeah.
One of the things about the fight that I was saying is that Degale's punch output in his last couple of fights has been pretty low, and one of the things, Groves didn't throw like loads and loads of punches, but Groves obviously kept him really well at the end of his jab. He's got a really good jab, and he's got a long reach, and he kept Eubank at bay. Every time Eubank tried to close the distance, got the jab in his face, kept him at bay. And I wonder whether Degale will be able to do that, to keep it as a kind of a boxing display, a technical contest rather than a street fight. because as we know, Eubank has got good street fighting experience. It's literally been in street fights. Literally, you can watch. Another thing is that the way I was thinking about it was that if Eubank were to fight Truax, I would back Eubank fairly heavily to beat him. So for that to be for Degale to be the favourite, then he has to have improved substantially since his last two fights. Do you see what I mean? He's got to have found something else. He's got to have found some more like fitness or mojo or motivation or strength. He's got to have found something and not be in a terminal decline or just have plateaued for him to, I think, be able to win the fight, because I don't think he's likely to knock Eubank out, given that he's not really knocked anyone out for a while. And given that that's the case, is he likely to be able to keep him off him the whole time, given that he couldn't really against Truax?
Yeah.
That's... So, I don't know. I think I said, I think Eubank's going to beat Groves, and then obviously was proven wrong. I think I probably picked Eubank for that, but I'm inclined to pick him again just because I think Degale has... I'm not seeing anything to suggest he's not in a kind of fairly hefty decline.
Well,
what do you think?
I think I'm actually gonna give it to Degale. Actually,
nice.
I'm gonna go with Degale.
We got skin in the game now, Ryan.
We do indeed. And it's only because I just have such little confidence in Chris Eubank Jr. being able to pull it out the bag in the big occasion. I think under the lights, I think he's gonna freeze. He's going to run out of ideas, and he's going to go back to type. And I just don't think that he's going to be able to deal with the pressure.
Interesting.
So there we go. We will see next week.
I was going to say, Ryan, just as I probably should have mentioned this before, but it's quite relatively interesting for anyone that isn't aware. James Degale's pal, who's instrumental in the making of this fight, Al Heyman. Is Al Heyman? I keep saying Hyman. So yeah, Al Heyman is Degale's advisor and pal, apparently, and he was quite instrumental, supposedly, in the making of this fight, which is, kind of very much within the kind of, because he was involved, wasn't he, with the Pacquiao Broner effort?
Yeah.
So it's in that kind of mold. So it's obviously his type. So, and if Degale's if he's gonna be terrible, and he's never gonna reach world level, he's as well demonstrating that in a fight, which makes him a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
Which this will. So, can you blame him? If I were him, I'd rather fight Eubank for a whole bunch of money than what? Fight Callum Smith? I don't think so.
No chance.
I think we agreed Callum Smith would take him apart.
He's just so big for the weight, man.
I don't think he'd want any piece of that. Crikey, if he vacated to avoid Uska Gatai, then I think you'd have to pay him all the tea in China to fight Callum Smith. So yeah.
Right, cool. Well, with that in mind, let's move on to what the F are the results from last week.
Well, I think everyone was shocked and surprised by none of the results last week. Certainly none of the main ones. Rob Brandt defended his WBA regular middleweight title on the Friday night. He won by 11th round TKO in a one-sided affair versus Kasan Baisangurov, as pretty much expected. Leo Santa Cruz defended his WBA featherweight championship against the game but overmatched Rafael Rivera in a 119-109 on all three judges' cards. He afterwards, I should say, Ryan, talking about punch output, Leo Santa Cruz, who is one busy Duracell bunny of a fighter and also super talented, threw 1,000 273 punches in that fight.
Jesus.
That boy punches a lot. He's also very, very active after the fight in calling people out. And since the fight, he's called out Oscar Valdez, Josh Warrington, Gary Russell Jr., and Carl Frampton. Oh, and Gervonta Davis. He's called out all of them, so he wants to fight all of those fighters. So he is pretty whorish, I would say. I would say, in terms of who he wants to fight. He's any big name fight he's up for. I would like to see him fight any of those guys, and any of them would be really good for various different reasons.
Definitely. I could. Well, there's been chat about like Frampton because apparently there's going to be a big announcement.
The trilogy.
Oh, yeah, really? It was on BBC News. Like Frampton saying that there's going to be a big announcement soon, so I could see the Leo Santa Cruz trilogy happening.
I wouldn't give. I don't know. I don't know if I'd fancy.
Frampton would die, but like you know.
Well, I mean, he obviously has beaten him in the past, but I don't. I mean, Frampton seems to be a little bit.
Not this version of Frampton. That's the thing.
I don't think he's quite. Yeah, I don't think he's quite as. If he's not quite as good as he was, and he only just won when he was at his best. So yeah, we'll see.
Cool. Well, what the F are the fights this weekend?
Chris Eubank Jr. is fighting James Degale. I don't know if we mentioned.
No, but you know what I think will be quite interesting is Joe Joyce and Stavern. That's the main reason I really want to watch it. I want to see like what is Joe Joyce doing, and like if he bowls over Stavern really quickly, it's time he's just got to fucking shit or get off the pot. He's got to fucking fight someone. Like
I'm fed up of saying he needs to step up his opponent level because he keeps not doing it. Yeah. His hardest fight was still like Lewison on his debut.
Yeah.
He's not fighting nuggets. I mean, I know Stavern's a former world title holder, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Where was a world title challenger?
No. He had the belt.
Wilder got
it off him. Yeah.
But I mean, I think he was a poor champion then, and on the basis of his last outing against Wilder, where he did not want to be in the fight and was wildly out of shape, I don't know. I'd be curious to see if Stavern's in any kind of condition for the fight. I guess we'll know very shortly, see what he looks like at weigh-in, but I think Joyce will bowl him out in a few.
Yeah. Now, Lee Selby versus Omar Douglas at lightweight. Mm-hmm. So Selby's moved up 2 weight classes. Mm-hmm. Interesting thing about this, there was an interview on the BBC today, I think, as we're recording, where he's talking about actually like the weight cutting was killing him.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if he is a much improved fighter at lightweight. The only thing is, man, we're talking about the lightweight division right now is fucking on fire. Mm-hmm. So it's a risky division to start campaigning in, I think. You know, I mean, just look at who's in that division right now.
I know.
You know, you're making a rod for your own back if you're saying I'm going to start campaigning at lightweight. If even if he could, like, if he just went up 1 but 2, I mean, fuck me. If he went like super feather, like that would have been, I think, a smarter move. Like,
I mean, it's indicative of how much difficulty he was facing to make the weight. But I mean, I don't understand why he wouldn't have moved. I mean, I suppose because he had a belt, that's why he didn't move up 1 earlier. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if it was that much of a struggle, he should have like vacated and fought at super feather for a while. But it's quite unusual, isn't it, for fighters to go up, like to just jump and miss out to skip a weight class. That's quite unusual, I think. But anyway, we'll see how he gets on.
Totally.
A few fights down the line. Avni Yildirim.
Yeah, we just
mentioned him. So he's getting his bizarrely his WBC super middleweight title shot against Anthony Dirrell. Dirrell's good but not great, I don't think. We've talked about super middles are not being fantastic at the minute.
Yeah.
Or they're being there's not a load of them that are super talented.
No.
But anyway. So yeah, Yildirim gets on. Watch this. Yildirim's going to bang him out.
Totally, like round one.
Eubank's fodder becomes the super middleweight champion, and Eubank will be like, what's going on here? There's also a card on DAZN in the States and Sky Sports from Tijuana, Mexico, being headlined by Brandon Rios and Humberto Soto at welter.
Cool. Well, Andy, do you want to tell us what the F went wrong last week?
Nothing.
Fucking hell, man. Christ.
Well, if anyone could spot anything that happened last week that was definitely wrong, not opinion pieces, but factually inaccurate that we said, do let us know. Spoiler fun. But otherwise, I'm saying I think it was all good in the hood.
It's only 33 episodes it took us.
33 episodes. So as of now, we are 100% right 3% of the time. We're like Sex Panther. What is it? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Sex Panther.
We're like a Sex Panther knockoff that's not as good as Sex Panther.
Like that Sex Panther you get when you're away in Greece.
Yeah, by a guy selling it as you're like walking around the beach, selling it as you're lying there. 3% of the time we're right 100% of the time. Anyway, there are a couple of things to clarify from last week very quickly. Dave Brailsford's right hand man is Matthew Syed. His name is. I couldn't quite remember it last week. And do you remember I spoke about Chris Froome? Like they did some amazing calculation within the realm of kind of data analysis, talking about marginal gains to win. It was the Giro d'Italia.
Okay.
And it was one stage where they worked out that he could claw back an enormous amount of time. And it was to do with working out the wattages and the maximum carb intake his body could utilise per hour. And they did things like everyone on the team, including like support staff, were all stationed on the biggest incline with water, so he didn't have to take a 500-gram water bottle up, including apparently like security and so on, and loads of people that had never passed a water bottle to a moving rider, which is apparently a bit more complicated than it sounds. Like apparently it's not just like giving them a water bottle, apparently it's more complicated than that. But they used like all these different people, and it was this massive like logistics thing to drop his weight by 500 grams. So that was very much within the realm of marginal gain. So
nice.
They worked out the power, there's like the wattage and so on, etc. So it's pretty minute detail stuff. So that's what it was last week. That was the story.
Good stuff. Well, I think it's probably time we move on to the thick section this week of random fucking news.
Billy Joe Saunders.
Yeah, well, I think he heard that there was a venue open on April 13th. This is Frank Warren mugging Eddie Hearn right off, by the way.
Because he's fighting on that day?
Yeah, at Wembley.
But it's the arena.
Oh, right, okay. It's not Wembley Stadium, right, okay.
No. Well, I don't know. I'm assuming it must be the arena. He wouldn't fill Wembley, crikey. But yeah, it's funny. The date's obviously become vacant. He's fighting for the super middleweight WBO belt against Shafat Usufi, who's not a fighter I know an awful lot about / anything, but our much better informed listenership have reliably informed us that this is going to be a bit of a cakewalk for BJS. One of the points is that I'd got myself a bit confused about is, well, why is this? When did this become vacant? And it's hard to actually find that, like, officially it has, but it has, because Gilberto Ramirez has vacated to move up to light heavy, and because of the way the WBO does it, he will be next in line. So the rumor is that he will fight Sergey Kovalev.
Right. Okay.
So that's why there's then this vacancy, and Billy Joe Saunders somehow gets to fill it.
Okay.
against Shafat Sufi, who's apparently a bit poop.
Now,
So-
we need to talk about the big fucking news this week. They came out of nowhere.
We did a bit. Our inside man let us down a bit with this one.
Fuck me.
Because we didn't know about
No,
this.
we did not. And, like, so Tyson Fury signed this $80 million deal with ESPN, which I think explains why the purse bids were delayed. I think.
It does.
So
It shows you how much the WBC president Mauricio Suleiman knows about shit, because he's like, oh yeah, we sorted in the next couple of days, which is obviously come and gone, and it shows you that he had no idea what was going on.
No. Frank Warren said that this kind of opportunity just presented itself. I think ESPN were like, shit, we don't have a heavyweight. Why don't we move into the market that's been filled by HBO, get ourselves a heavyweight? And so they've signed Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury's in the right place at the right time. What I find extremely interesting about all this as well, though, is that actually what no one's kind of realized is who is he going to be fighting? Because there aren't really many heavyweights. Like, we did a whole episode about this, right? There's very little strength and depth. So, who is he going to be fighting that doesn't have a deal with either Showtime or DAZN?
Well, the next ones on the ones in the list are Ortiz and White and Miller. Miller's not going to be relevant after 1st of June, I don't think.
Exactly. So, I think it's all a bit of a funny one. But, I mean, I guess we'll see, but it does make things difficult. Whether or not they, the situation presents itself where the three broadcasters realize that they have to work together in order to, all make money.
I think that might be the lack of strength and depth might be the saving grace for this, because there are so few interesting fights they can make that aren't two of those three fighting each other.
Yeah,
and I think that might be the saving grace. Yeah, that might be what forces the broadcaster's hand. And there's only, I think we've talked about it before, but there's only a couple of occasions where the rival broadcasters have been able to work together on a production.
Lewis and Tyson was a big one, and I think Pacquiao and Mayweather was another one. I think those are really the only two big ones. So
I think the lack of strength and depth maybe makes it more likely, but yeah, I mean, was it 80 million for 5 fights?
Yes.
Did you say if it's if it's 5 fights and none of them are Wilder or Joshua, they're gonna have misspent a lot of 80 million. I would have said.
I know.
Get him to fight Chisora again. That's always good for a laugh. Jesus Christ.
Talking about Chisora. Talking about the man himself, he's got himself a new trainer. He is.
Your boy.
He's now in my boy Dave Caldwell's stables. So I think that actually that's going to do him a world of good, to be honest. Because I think maybe it was his fitness that let him down a little bit against Dillian White. And I think that
he was a lot better though. He looked a lot better than he has for a good few fights.
In terms of boxing skill, I think his boxing skill went up.
But I thought fitness wise he looked better than he did, because he looked really bad in some of his previous ones. He looked better, but not to say he couldn't get better still. So I take your point. Yeah, Caldwell might get him into peak form, but I don't know. Chisora's getting on, and he's 35. Maybe he's been in a lot of bruising encounters.
Yeah.
Don't know. But he called out Parker.
Yeah, he called out Parker. So we'll see. I mean, who knows? I mean, Parker needs a fight.
And if he's all about the kind of UK profile, it's a great fight. And if he beats Chisora more comprehensively than White did,
that's him back in the game.
Back in the game, yeah. I think knocking out Chisora is a great career move.
Yeah.
If he can do it. Other bit of random news.
Yeah.
Your boy, your hot prospect, everyone's hot prospect that's making all of the waves. Has he gone too far this time, Ryan? I think he's gone too far.
I think he has as well, man. I think he's getting a little bit too big for his boots, I think.
Yeah, I think this is bold. So, Teofimo Lopez basically said that he would beat comprehensively the greatest boxer, Lomachenko.
Yeah.
He said he would take him to town.
Yeah. He says that he has 3 or 4 ways that he could beat him. I don't know.
That's handy. That's handy. I think Lomachenko was relatively dismissive of him, saying like, well, do something first. You're looking great, but you need to beat some high-level guys or higher-level guys before you become relevant. You little scamp. You cheeky little monkey.
Then he rubbed him on the head and sent him on his way.
I think he'll get there. I think Lopez will get there. He looked. I thought he looked unbelievable. Yeah. But anyway, he does need to. He needs this. I think there's obviously like a fair few stages before he gets to fighting Lomachenko.
Definitely.
Jesus Christ.
Definitely.
And just as we recorded, the last one I thought was worth mentioning was it's all getting a bit hot and frisky in the press conferences for Joshua Miller.
Yeah, it was.
I think Miller's taking Joshua to the dark side a wee bit.
Yeah, pushing him out and stuff, and Miller keeps saying stuff about Anthony Joshua's mum, which I think is a bit fucking rad.
Anthony Joshua said he pays Miller's mum's rent in response.
Yeah, it's quite funny though. That is quite funny.
But yeah, it's like we're seeing a quite interesting side, because normally he's like all about the respect, etc. Where it was like with Klitschko and Povetkin, and to a lesser extent there wasn't trash talking with Parker. But now we're getting like what he said, like I'm gonna knock him the fuck out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
he's bringing the. So there seems to be genuine animosity there, which makes it quite interesting, at least in terms of the build-up, if not the fight. I don't think it does Miller any good. I don't think there's any way you can win if Joshua's like super fired up and he just tries to like not box and just like have a brawl with him. I still think he wins comprehensively. I don't think there's a way in which Miller can win.
No way.
So that's it.
Right.
Did you have any more?
No, that's it. That's
random enough.
Random enough. Right. Well, should we move on?
You don't have any more.
No more dick related. No more dick related stuff. Although Lucas Brown will be fighting in Scotland soon.
What?
Lucas Brown is fighting on the 2nd of March at Trump Turnberry against a guy named Kamil Sokolowski, who's like, he's 6 wins, 14 losses.
Why is he? Why?
I think it's a warm up for Dave Allen.
Is the Dave Allen one? Is that like a headline fight?
I don't know.
It
hasn't been announced yet, but I know it's in April.
Interesting. Right. Okay. Sorry, that was a bit extra. A bit of extra random news. So, shall we move on, right?
Yeah, let's move on.
Well, you go first, because I'm still thinking about mine.
Okay.
I've still got some options. And tell me what grinds your gears this week.
You know what really grinds my gears?
Right, Andy, I'm going to tell you what grinds my gears this week.
Go on.
It's Mr. Mauricio Salomon, right? The president of the WBC.
Right,
he grinds my fucking gears, man, because he's delusional as fuck. He's so delusional. So as we go to air, there are reports from him saying that not to worry about the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury rematch. The WBC are confident the fight will take place, right? Mm-hmm. But in order for that all to happen and them to get a date and all this stuff, like, they need to fucking do the purse bids now. right? He needs to take ownership of his fucking governing body, because like what they need to start doing, the WBC, and this actually goes for all sanctioning bodies, is they need to start calling mandatories and organizing purse bids if they need to. Because I will find it very difficult, I think, to understand why ESPN wouldn't want to show this fight and why Showtime wouldn't want to show this fight. You know? Because, of course they do. The rematch is going to be way bigger than the first fight because of that final round. So I think that whatever contract negotiations they had up until this point are going in the shredder, because Tyson Fury now you know, I think he sees himself as an A side rather than a B side.
Yeah. I think so. I think that, and he's saying, obviously, he's like negotiating position where he's saying like, oh, you know, it's not the end of the world if the fight doesn't happen. That's bluster.
Yeah,
I think.
of course it is. Of course it is.
I think he both would want and need the fight, really, but the dynamic has completely changed, obviously, with the deal that he signed. But the thing is, Mauricio Sullivan could have avoided all this if he just not interfered and not given them the extension and said, this is the purse bid date. Now, whether or not Fury would have had to have withdrawn because he was in the midst of a negotiation with ESPN, I don't know. But he's not helped the situation, because he's just given them more time to sort of prevaricate without really understanding the reasons why. Do you know what I mean? He obviously wasn't aware fully of what was happening in terms of Fury's deal. So he's kind of like, he's just meddling and making a mess of it. So he should just have left it. They should have, and at least there would have been a chance that at least Fury could have gone all I do in the fight, Showtime could have bid for it, etc. It is a mess.
Well, I just don't understand it. And I think that actually, like, his stewardship of the administrative side of the WBC, where it comes to, you know, calling mandatories. I mean, they protected Deontay Wilder for such a long time as well. I think that it's gotten to a point now where it's like, look, you need to actually take some leadership of your sanctioning body here, and you know, you're letting down the fans. You're letting down actually like fighters as well. I mean, as much as we make fun of him, poor Dillian White is, you know, he's been jumping through all sorts of hoops, fighting whoever he fucking has to become a mandatory. You know, how many eliminators has that guy fought? All because, you know, they keep protecting Deontay Wilder as much as possible because they don't really want him facing a live opponent.
Yeah. Which is, I guess, has happened, yeah, but it's
well, yeah, but has it though? Has it though? Because actually, and you know, I want to put a little asterisk against the first fight. You know, really, that isn't prime Tyson. You know, Fury only
that was the risk. That was the Wilder was counting on it being subprime Tyson.
Yeah, and it was
subprime. Yeah.
So you know, if you know, Tyson Fury has improved, which you would imagine over this period of time, then, you know, Wilder is going to be facing a much sharper opponent. And I genuinely don't see him winning this time in the rematch.
You think it's unlikely? I mean, he's obviously, he can always land that game-changing punch. He can do it, but it's like, unless he does, yeah, he's not going to win any other way.
Yeah. So anyway, that's really all from me. I feel that this whole scenario about the Fury Wilder rematch has only come about because the WBC and Mauricio Sarraman have not been doing their job, basically. So
yeah, I think they've agree. They've definitely like exacerbated the situation.
Yeah. So anyway, that's me. I'm out. So,
I like it.
Andy, do you want to tell me what grinds your gears this week?
You know what really grinds my gears?
Yeah, I was kind of and on about a few different things. I will give special mention once again to Lennox Lewis for sticking his big oar in and saying about how Joshua is being mismanaged and how he's not doing all he can to get the fights and stuff like that. The whole heavyweight scene is a bit like that, where like you know that there's the fighters are protecting their percentages, and there's none of them that are prepared to just go, I don't care, I will do it for free because I'm just so desperate to fight that opponent. And none of them have that. Anyway, I don't want to get into it because it's not my grinds, my gears, and it's not fair to have two. So I'll pick, and this is really brief, Billy Joe Saunders again, right? Winds me up. This boy winds me up. I don't understand why he's now fighting at super middleweight, because if he'd been fighting at middleweight, he would have got the title shot where he should have been defending against Andrade, but he obviously had failed the drugs test, so he got stripped. But he was going to get, because of the whole hoo-ha about the suspension, etc., he was going to get to fight him for the belt. So the thing that pisses me off is him saying, oh, well, and Warren's coming out and saying the reason Billy Joe Saunders is fighting at super middle is because he struggled to get the big fights. He tried for so many years to get the big fights in the middleweight division. He can't get them. Therefore, he's moving up to super middle, and that's the reason why. That is complete bullshit, because he could have had... He was guaranteed that he would get the fight against Andrade and get his belt back. And then, if anyone wants to like unify or they want to get another belt, they've got to fight him. Yeah. But instead, he's fighting a Sufi for the vacant super middleweight WBO, and the reason why is because he can win the belt in a much easier fight because Sufi is poop.
Yep.
But he's not going to say that. I don't think he's not big for super middle.
No.
He's no Callum
He's
Smith.
He's definitely not Callum Smith.
And he was not a big puncher. You know, he's a super talented boxer, super tricky, clever boxer, judges things very well. But he's not a big hitter at all at middle. So he's going to have even more of a power deficit against any of the big hitters, although we've said they are few and far between at super middle. So the only reason he's taking that fight is because he can win a belt, chat about it, but he can take a very low risk fight against the sort of lower tier opponent to do it, rather than Andrade, who's, I guess some people would say, a tiny bit untested, but is certainly a very good, certainly a very much more preferred opponent. Sufi is versus Andrade. So that's why he's doing it. Stop talking bullshit. You're not a super middle. You're just doing it because you don't want to have a tough fight to get your belt back.
Yeah, agreed.
Be honest. You chicken.
Agreed.
And that's what grinds my gears this week.
Well, good stuff. Good stuff.
We should keep like a tally chart of topics, because I think like Billy Joe Saunders has been at least 3 or 4 times for me now.
I know.
So like we should keep a tally and see who's like at the end of season 1. If we do, are we going to do seasons? We have to have a break at some point,
I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Take a break over the summer or something.
Like just a week or something, and then we'll call it season 2.
Yeah, fucking hell.
See who's the tops the grinds my gears chart. All right, Tyson Fury, Billy Joe Saunders, the governing bodies. They're all going to be up there, are they?
Amir Khan. Oh, fuck.
Dear.
Right, okay, well, guys, just a reminder, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Like the Facebook page, share the Facebook page, get involved. But we will be back next week with a new episode and maybe a new look. So, from that, with that in mind, it's goodbye from me, Ryan.
And goodbye from me, Andrew.